safe and well. My name's Will Sibley, and I'm really pleased to be introducing you to one of our Friday morning sessions once again. For people in the audience who may not have been to a Leaf Surgery before, Leaf Surgeries are monthly online webinars delivered by the Leaf team to keep in touch with our members. Usually these sessions fall on the second Friday of every month from September to June. And the focus on these sessions alternate around different themes that are relevant to food and farming. And we are joined by guest speakers for each of these sessions and really enjoy hearing their take on these different important topics. And for today's surgery, we'll be exploring the topic of water quality and management, specifically in the UK context, and what role can the food and farming sectors play in improving this. And of course, with water being one of the most critical and abundant natural resources that we can't survive without, we can't produce food without, and we can't have thriving and natural ecosystems without. We are all impacted by the condition of our natural resources and our water systems. So this is a really significant topic, and it has an effect on farming communities and businesses. It's complex and multifaceted, and innovation and collective action are two of the key components to tackle this challenge, and that's what we'll hear about in the talk today. So I'm delighted to introduce our first guest speaker, Philippa Mansfield. Philippa is the agricultural lead at Catchment Sensitive Farming, which is a partnership led by Natural England in collaboration with DEFRA and the Environment Agency, working with farmers and partners across England to support food production that protects our waters, our air and our soil. And Philippa does that through training advisors who offer farming advice in how to improve air and water quality through different farming practices and management. So a very warm welcome to you, Philippa. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for inviting me. Well.
And our second guest is Will McManus. Will works for WRAP, and that's the Waste and Resources Action Programme, as a specialist in their food systems transformation team. And Will's work and the work of the wider WRAP team is to drive collective action into tackling the causes of climate change and really to provide a blueprint for a sustainable future, which includes work in the food and farming industries too. And WRAP have recently published the Courtauld 2030 Water Roadmap, which presents a vision and pathway of how the industry can collaborate and mobilise towards a target of 50% of the UK's fresh food being sourced from areas of sustainable water management. So a very warm welcome to you too, Will. Thank you for joining. And the session will be chaired by our very own Claire Mike, Director of Business Development and Technical at Leaf, who will be talking with Philippa and Will as we go along. So good morning to you too, Claire. Welcome.
Morning.
And lastly, before I hand over, we love to hear from our audience too, and please do get involved. I can see lots of regular joiners here today, as well as lots of new faces too, which is brilliant. A big warm welcome to you all again. And we'd love to hear from you. So please do submit your questions to Philippa and Will via the chat function, which should be somewhere at the bottom of your window. And we've saved some time at the end for a Q&A. So thank you. Sit back and relax and enjoy. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you. And yes, a very huge warm welcome to you all today and to our guests, Philippa and Will. We've got a couple of Wills here this morning, so that's got a little bit confusing. As we've got the great blessing of two guests today to share their thoughts and their views on this really critical subject of water, I'm actually going to give as much time to our discussion as possible today. As Will said, water is so critical to food production systems, and yet it doesn't always quite get the same airtime as other subjects such as carbon, biodiversity, soil. Water is indeed a very complex topic, not least due to its very catchment-wide nature. Taking an integrated farm management approach, we encourage farmers to consider water in the context of other local land users, as well as how they might use, protect and preserve water within their own businesses. And whilst we do have that UK focus today, of course, it would be remiss of me not to mention, that the Leaf Mark standard is a global standard. And actually, there are very different considerations in many territories for our global contingent of Leaf Mark certified farmers, where water scarcity is such a huge and immediate risk. So let's delve into today's discussion straight away. I'd like to turn to you first, Philippa, if that's okay. I'd love you just to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do with catchment sensitive farming, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I started off my career in ADAS, working as a plant pathologist, and then became an agronomist, mostly working in the Cotswolds. And I've worked a lot on field trials, did a few years in West Africa working on agricultural development over there. And then worked on farm advice in DEFRA and Natural England, and in the last 16 years part of catchment sensitive farming. So I'm now in the catchment sensitive farming agriculture national team, working as agriculture lead. I've done a few jobs in CSF partnerships, training and now agricultural lead. So basically I support our catchment sensitive farming advisors there's a network of 80 odd catchment sensitive farming advisors and partners that work around England, and they're out there providing advice to farmers on farm practices and infrastructure improvements they can make, which will help reduce the impact on water quality, air quality and flood risk.
Thanks, Philippa. And I know how critical that army of advisors will be to farmers out there. What's the most important advice for farmers in terms of improving water quality and perhaps the practices that they might engage with on farm?
Yeah, in CSF we do quite a strong, we've got a strong evidence-based approach. So we have a kind of list of measures that we recommend to farmers, and it's all voluntary whether they take them up or not. And about 6% of farmers that we advise do take up that advice and implement it, and it's helped with some support with grants as well. So we work very closely with Country Stewardship, so that helps kind of ease the taking on of different measures. But actually what really is needed is just smaller actions by a lot of people across the whole catchment, really. So we're dealing really with diffuse pollution rather than pollution incidents. So it's sort of small amounts of cumulative pollutants, so phosphates, sediments, pesticides, fecal indicator organisms that all can get into water, and also ammonia emissions from farming, and then loss of sediment, which and that can lead to flood risk as well. So yeah, the main things that we're looking to do are to kind of improve soil health, and protect those soils, reduce the loss of soils across catchments, and so getting soils back into good structure, good soil health where the biology is working well, and then the nutrients are taken up more, that recycling works, and there isn't so much reliance on fertilizers, and a lot of what we do is also around the farmyard. So managing the kind of water and potential pollution within the farmyard, so managing slurry and storage, and keeping clean and dirty water separate so that you can deal with the dirty water and spread them on the land, but at times that it's not going to cause pollution, at the same time taking clean water out of the system.
That's key there, exactly, a key demonstration of how that kind of integrated thinking is really quite critical, and you can't really talk about water in this context without talking about soil or without talking about pollutants and things like that. So yeah, thank you so much for that, and really important as well to consider who you might be working with, or who your neighbours are in that kind of catchment area, because for a great many of the growers that we work with, a lot of the horticulture growers, protected growers, actually their neighbours might look very different to those, you know, other types of farm that might be more rural. So I think that's really quite important about how those different stakeholders might work together. So yeah, thank you for that. Will, can I turn to you if that's okay? Perhaps you could do the same for us. Could you just share a little bit about yourself and what you do at WRAP, please?
Good morning, Claire. Yeah, of course. So nice to be here. Thanks so much, folks. And yeah, my name's Will McManus. I work at WRAP. WRAP's a climate action NGO. We work across several different sectors and have strong roots in the food and drink sector. I've been here for closing in on 15 years, and I've had the pleasure of we've been LEAF members the whole of that time. LEAF was the first stakeholder that I was given to work with. So I've been working with you and colleagues for all of that time, and it's been fabulous. Really great support of LEAF's work. I think it's so important. I think it's worth explaining that within WRAP and our work with the various industries we work with, one of our key ways of working is through voluntary agreements. So this is where we come together with the relevant industry. Here we talk about the food and drink industry. We identify the key sustainability targets that we want to deliver, which are really important to deliver. And once we've got agreement around that, we then start to work out the strategy to how we're going to move industry to deliver those, and obviously support the implementation of how we can realize those targets. The one which is really important here is the Quarter 2030 Water Roadmap. And this is an agreement not just with the UK food and drink sector, it's also with WWF and the Rivers Trust. So really good, credible organizations that are involved in this. And within the Water Roadmap, we ask businesses to sign up to the Water Roadmap. They can do that for free. There's no cost to it. And then once they're committed, we ask them to be reviewing water risks and water use within their own operations and working towards measuring and improving efficiency over time. And then after that, to be looking down their supply chains and identifying where there are water risk hotspots. And where they've got water risk hotspots, it's then really important to start thinking about how we start reducing the risks associated with that. And the solution is through collective action, action at the catchment scale. So we ask businesses that signed up to the Water Roadmap to then progress towards supporting those collective action projects to help us achieve the targets of 50% of the UK's food and drink fresh supply being sourced from areas with sustainable water management.
Thanks, Will. And I think that's, you know, in terms of how we can make water relevant and approachable by all of the various stakeholders in the sector, I think that collective action is really important. Can we just delve into that a little bit? What could collective action look like, Will? Is that the, you know, the key stakeholders sitting around a table and trying to formulate how we might work together better, how we might measure better? Is it about deciding what the key indicators should look like? What is it that when we come together, those organizations that, you know, can really help in this space, what do you think we could be doing in terms of that collective action?
Yeah, it's all of that. It's also the action that Philippa was talking about as well. But I think it's worth just stepping back to say, what is the challenge? And it's a really serious one, actually. Within the UK, we have 14% of our rivers and lakes achieving good ecological status. The implication of that is that 86% are not, 86% are failing. They're not functioning ecologically, and they're not delivering the environmental services that we all need, whether that's for farming, whether that's for local communities. We're seeing river springs dry up. We're seeing aquifers drying up. We're seeing the population growing. We're seeing water consumption per capita growing. And all of this is reducing supply of water and availability of water, reducing the quality of water. And it's also increasing the competition. And I think the reality is that when push comes to shove between farming and communities, the community is more likely to win out. So these are really serious challenges, and it presents risk. It presents risk for food businesses when they're looking down the supply chains, thinking where they're going to source from, how can they maintain security of supply, how can they identify and manage those risks. They need solutions. And it prevents very serious risks, obviously, for the farm as well, because we're reliant on water, whether it's through rainfall, whether it's through irrigation, to maintain production. So these risks are very serious for us operating at all the different scales. And with the changing climate, we're seeing increased temperatures, which are drying the soils out more, and they're putting more moisture into the atmosphere. The atmosphere's warmer, so it can hold more water. So then when the rain does come, there's a lot more to come, but it's falling on these dry, hard soils, so we're less able to store it. And we can just see a vicious circle there. So these are really big challenges, really serious challenges. And the important point is about collective action is that no one land manager is going to be able to solve these challenges on their own. It is problems at the catchment scale, at the landscape scale. Sometimes when we talk about groundwater, it can be at the region. It could be the whole of East Anglia, for example, when we're talking about aquifers, which are spanning catchments. So to manage these risks, we need to be coming together in collective action. We need to be bringing together the stakeholders that you're talking about. So 100% farming and land managers has got to be there. We've got to be thinking about the water companies. We've got to be thinking about industry. We've got to be thinking about communities. We've got to be thinking about the catchment-based approach and identifying what the plans are for that catchment, coming together collectively to identify a single plan, which we can all then funnel resources into. And of course, NGOs, we've got just as much responsibility to sign up to those collective actions and those single plans. So the Courtauld Water Roadmap is one of the solutions there. It provides ready-made projects. So the projects are channeling the resources from the food and drink businesses that want to support projects. So within the UK, we've got 4 projects already, and that number is growing. We support a lot of the well-known projects. So you may not see the RAP or the Courtauld name so much, but it would be the Rivers Trust project in the southeast for the River Medway, or it would be the Cameo project there, the Cam Ely Ooze project in East Anglia, and we work with the Wye and Us Foundation, and we work in the Tamar, and then we've got projects overseas as well, which are increasing in number. So businesses can, if they want to support collective action, they can channel their resources into this ready-made solution if they'd like to, but there are other solutions, and this is not the only way of doing it, but it's a ready-made solution for those businesses that for whom it works. And those projects then fund the catchment coordinator, and the catchment coordinator is then the link back to farming. So through this, the food and drink supply chain are funding the coordinators to go to farms, to identify what the challenges are, what the solutions are, and then support the farm to identify funding to implement the solutions, so that across a catchment scale, we can be aligning ourselves behind the catchment plans, working towards these indicators, and delivering the solutions throughout the catchment, farm by farm.
Thank you for sharing a bit more about those projects, Will. And yeah, RAP and indeed the other stakeholders, WWF, Rivers Trust, clearly are, really taking the lead there. And it's very important to do that. Interesting when you talk about risk. I had the privilege of visiting a farm estate recently where actually they were considering their role in terms of risk for the local community in terms of water shortage in the future, and actually building into their own plans on farm how they might store water to be available at some point in the future, in the next 5 to 10 years, for the local community use, because they recognize, a critical role that farming can play in serving, the community in that way. So Very interesting thinking. Thank you, Will. That's brilliant. Philippa, if I could turn back to you again, that would be wonderful. Thank you. From your point of view, what progress in water management and quality would you love to see in the next 5 years?
We've been set some really challenging targets in the environmental improvement plan. Well, the government has set some really challenging targets over the next 5 to 10 years. So, for example, for ammonia emissions, we want to reduce those by 16% by 2030, and they're actually been going up over the last few years. So it's kind of reversing that trend. And for water quality, we're looking to have a 10% reduction in nutrients and sediment pollution by 2028, so over the next 5 years. It's going to be really, really challenging to meet that. I have to say they're really hard targets. I mean, CSF have been, in their first 10 years of working, we achieved up to 12% reduction in pollutants in the catchments where we're working. So those very targeted sort of areas where we were prioritizing our advice on farms. So it can be done, but actually, we need to do a lot more to achieve that across the board. And there's a particular focus in catchments such as the River Wye and other catchments which have got protected sites which are in poor condition. So the target is 15% reduction of pollutants in those areas. But I think we can, working together, we can do a lot, and a lot of what the advice that we give and the support that we give for farmers to make changes, they're win-wins. So for the farmer and for the environment, and it all goes together really. So things like integrating your manures into your nutrient management plan and putting them on at the right time of year so that they're not being lost as nitrate to groundwater and affecting drinking water quality, or going up in the air and being lost as ammonia. All those are efficiencies for farms, as well as reducing the impact in the environment. And there's a lot of overlaps as well between different pollution and greenhouse gas losses as well. So I think the key thing is we need to move from kind of where we are now, where there's a lot of areas where there's a lot of excess nutrients, a lot of more nitrogen going on than is needed. We're only getting about 45% efficiency in the use of nitrogen. The rest of it's being lost to water or air. And then we've got a lot of phosphate going on, particularly where there's a lot of livestock on the west side of the country, and then and on the other side of the country we're kind of having to buy phosphate and put it on. So I think we do need some big step changes, and hopefully there'll be some new technologies coming along that can help those really big challenges. So things like I'm really hopeful that we'll get to the stage where we can take water out of slurry, dewater slurry, and turn it into a product which is a biofertilizer that we can then shift around the country, because at the moment the problem is you can't really move it economically, but if we could kind of create an economic situation where you can make a biofertilizer from manures and then use it where it's needed, and reduce the application where the soil's already got too much phosphate in, then that will make a big difference. But also the small gains, as I was saying before, will make a big difference. So if we can improve soil organic matter, for example, that means that the soils are going to be in better condition to take up nutrients. They'll also, water infiltration will be better. So they'll hold more water, which will help reduce the flood risk that we're likely to get more of, but also hold the water for droughts in the summer. And things like rainwater harvesting farmers can do. That is, we got a lot of demand for that at the moment, and there are grants out there to help with that. And it's good that you can reuse that water, and that might become more and more important. But also, you're reducing the amount of water that's going on to dirty farmyards, which have got manure on, which then becomes a pollution problem. So if you can kind of contain that and use it, So all that kind of, you know, what everybody in Leaf is trying to achieve as well, that integrated farming system and making better use of your resources and recycling things, all of that will help. We've got sort of 10 key measures that make the most difference to water quality, and that includes cover crops, riparian buffers, dirty water management, fencing off of rivers to reduce fecal indicators getting in, integrating manure and nutrients, covering slurry stores. That's a tricky one, but effective for reducing ammonia emissions, and reducing cultivations, but cultivating compacted soils where needed. And then there's a few more challenging ones, I suppose, in terms of changing land use, planting trees, arable reversion to grass with low inputs, and wetland constructive wetlands. Those are probably, you know, more difficult ones to fit into a farming system, but actually can make big differences where they can be used, in terms of reducing flood risk and water pollution. So I think, yeah, I think we can get there, but it means that a lot of improvement across farms within all catchments, plus a few big changes in technology.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. Yes, there's certainly some kind of easier win-wins that you can go for there, like the rainwater harvesting, certainly, that are more within reach. And then, you know, what are the nature-based solutions there might be with those kind of dual benefits or multiple benefits. And I was actually in a lab yesterday where we were looking at the technology of things like slow release biostimulants as well. So I think, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there that's being worked on as well. So yeah, that's very promising. Thank you, Philippa. Will, do you mind if I ask you the same question? Where would you like to see the progress in water quality, water management? Where would you like that to be in the next 5 years from your perspective?
I don't mind if you ask the same question. Do you mind if I give the same answer as Philippa?
Ah, brilliant.
I'm sure you can add something more, Will.
Well, yeah, just, I mean, I'll pick out just a couple of those things. And on constructed wetlands that Philippa mentioned, I was thinking one of the projects with the Why Us Foundation, they have one of their early days constructed wetlands that they've been monitoring phosphorus. Phosphorus coming into the wetland and then phosphorus coming out has seen a 50% reduction in phosphorus. So that's a great example, and the work that they've been doing, not just to get the funding to implement that, but also then the ability to monitor it, to be able to demonstrate, you know, what a great solution that is, I think is really important. I was going to say my main point, I think, is that we need to farms to become better suited to the changing climate. And in particular, I think that the focus is on soils. And this isn't news to anybody. Everyone knows that we need to be working on soils. But I think what was really interesting was something I was reading recently was showing how with reduced tillage, zero tillage, the example was, there was up to double water infiltration on a field that had zero tillage in comparison with conventional. And that for me is huge. If you can, and it's coming about because you've got improved structure, you've got better soil pore structure, you've got more vertical channels from where earthworms have been burrowing, where roots have been. And all of this water infiltration is then there for, obviously, for the growing crop. It's also going to be enough to be able to infiltrate down into the aquifer so that we can recharge the aquifer. But at the same time, we're halving the amount of runoff. And so we're reducing that flow and we're reducing the pollution. So improving soil quality and reduced tillage seems really, really important to me. And I think obviously a lot of farmers have already seen that benefit and you know, massive supporters of it. But I think the work that we can do to continue that and continue the uptake of reduced tillage wherever it's appropriate would be really great. And there's also the onus on nutrient management. We can't continue to use nutrients particularly thinking about, focusing on crop nitrogen requirement, but then not focusing about the phosphorus levels, whether that's in the soil or the manures that's being applied. We do need to be thinking about how can we responsibly use manures and slurries and not exceeding either the phosphorus or the nitrogen requirements. And that does imply that we need some technological fixes as well, because there are going to be situations where you've got all of those manures and slurries and you don't have the available land bank to be able to use them. So we need to be able to extract them, but it is changing. There are in Europe and now in the UK, nutrient stripping is becoming more accessible. There are more accessible and more reliable. There's also, pelleted manure products, which seems to be very popular for export, less so within the UK. So these solutions are coming online, and also seeing the supply chain mandating them. So we've got to be responding to this. So yeah, I think looking at soil and reduced tillage, looking at really good, really efficient nutrient management planning, and then of course all of this within the context of collective action, and to mirror what Philippa was saying, I think leaf farmers, integrated farm management and leaf mark, I think everyone here is already kind of on this journey, or if not kind of the leading proponents. So very much support what Leaf is doing, and I would love to see more of it.
Thanks, Will. And thank you both for that great insight there. I can see that the questions are streaming in, so I'm probably going to stop my own questioning now. Questioning sounds a little bit harsh. Questioning now, and turn to the audience. So, Will, can I hand back over? Will Sibley, can I hand back over to you to lead on the questions? Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much, and yeah, thank you so much, Will and Philippa. That was fascinating, and so many different factors at play in this issue, and what you both just covered there, so much in 20 minutes was great. So thank you very much. We do have, yes, we've got some questions in the chat open to everyone, and some have been directed to me directly. We'll start with a question on examples, and probably directed towards Will. Examples of other international or countries outside of not the UK that have improved water quality, or maybe similar kind of frameworks in terms of collaboration in different countries.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot. One of the projects, well, South Africa is a country which nearly reached the point of having to turn off the taps in Cape Town. They were so close to stopping flow of water for domestic use, and forcing people to have to go to hydrants to fill up buckets and containers a few years ago. And the investment and the progress that they've made since then has been really significant. So there's a lot of collective action there. Part of that is through Quarter 2030, but there's a lot of other organizations that are also taking this collective action catchment-based approach. I think Australia, the examples that they've implemented, the Murray-Darling River Basin is enormous, absolutely enormous. I think it's the size of France and Germany combined, just that combined river basin. And they have a catchment management board. It's a big organization, and it's providing this formal structure of, and it's got statutory powers so that they can control how water is used across that vast area. So I think Australia's work has been really great, and they've also pioneered a lot of the solutions on farm as well. So kind of the work from Pierre Yeomans and Keyline Design, really shaping our landscape, our farming landscape, to make sure that we are using as much of the water that's hitting our land as possible. There's a lot in South America as well. So Brazil's another country that has almost had to turn the taps off. We see a lot of horticultural production and sourcing for the UK from countries like Chile and Peru. And Peru has done an awful lot. So I don't know whether Keston would like to talk about any of the work that they've done around some of the leading and kind of quite original catchment-based and collective action work in those countries too. So you don't have to look hard. And I think the point is that these problems are universal. You know, there are rivers drying up and aquifers drying up all over the world. So everyone is having to respond to this, and everyone is very seriously challenged.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there's so much out there and brilliant examples. And yeah, totally right. Universal issues for universal solutions. Great. A question for Philippa, which I know that this sort of theme might be quite controversial in different viewpoints, but what's your view on introducing beavers to UK water systems, and in light of kind of identified benefits that they can bring in terms of sort of water filtration from dams, as well as flood mitigation too?
I mean, I think I like nature-based solutions where they can be used. Obviously it is one that's has to be managed really carefully, because introducing beavers will affect the trees around. They can go out to quite wide areas, and once they're there, obviously they can spread and breed and spread. But they are incredible engineers of natural flood management and damming systems, and they're much more effective than anything we can do to construct leaky woody Debbie dams and that sort of thing. They do they do slow the flow, and they filter the watercourse as it goes, and capture the sediment and the debris and that sort of thing in the way that they build the dams and redivert the water. And if they do, it does have to be done in a really careful, managed way, with everybody who owns the land around kind of bought into it, and understanding the risks that might occur, and the impacts. You're not just talking about just restricting them to one little bit of watercourse. They will spread, and they will affect the land around. So I definitely think I like them as a solution, but yeah, done in a really careful, managed project way, and that's why they kind of have to have licenses and that sort of thing.
Great, thank you, Philippa. We'll try and whiz through some great questions coming in. Got a question on, we could put this to both Philippa and Will, in that how can we make it as easy as possible for as many farm businesses to one gain knowledge of different management practices for water, and which have, I guess, the biggest win-wins or the most impact. So I think this question goes to how can we scale up as fast as we can, most effectively? What can be the kind of catalyst to make that happen? Perhaps Will, you can go first.
Of course. I think the responsibility is actually on people like WRAP, the NGO world, and the organizations delivering advice, to come together and be more clear. I think there are so many sets of recommendations and advice that I think if I were a farm manager, I would find it challenging to know, well, should I be following this set of advice or that set of advice? And they're broadly similar, but not quite the same. And I think when we're talking about collaboration and coordination, I think the farmers need to have clarity, certainly improve clarity. I guess we may not get to a perfect single kind of answer, but I think the responsibility is actually on us. I don't think we need new advice. Philippa gave us some very clear priority actions there. And I think we just need to do more to provide that, get behind a set of recommendations, and also direct people to the same place or fewer places, whether it's on the internet or elsewhere, to further improve that clarity. Does that make sense, Will?
Yes, thank you. It does. Of course, Philippa, if you have anything to add to that in terms of advice, of course.
Yeah, really good question. I mean, I think we all have to play our part, I suppose, where they're out on farms, and more, I suppose our role is about implementing on the farm where it's most appropriate, and looking at that, particular situation on a particular farm, what needs to be done, because every farm is a bit different, and it's understanding the catchment issues. So it's really about understanding, where is that water flowing to, where are the streams, where is there a drinking water abstraction point, if you've got groundwater, that sort of thing is important to kind of understand the context. But actually there's a lot we can do in terms of just general communication, I suppose, about those key changes that most farmers can make. Things like the soils, introducing more legumes, herbal lays, and cover crops, and grass clover, and all that sort of thing, which I suppose may be more through communication mechanisms. So whether it's the farming press, or more on there's actually a lot of information on and advice out there on places like HDB website and Leaf. We don't have our own website, but I think we do need more, maybe, to focus on what are the key actions that we can make, and to make a big difference. So I agree with Will on that. Maybe HDB might be the right forum for that. I do think there's a lot to say for some of these sort of growing farmer forums. You've got a fantastic group of leaf demonstration farmers, and communicating. We've been working with you, making some videos about what some of them are doing, and I think that's just a really inspiring way, I think, to influence how people act. So more of that would also help. I think lots of different communication channels is probably the way to go.
Thanks, Philippa, and yeah, brilliant to work on those videos with you. Then I'll put a link in to everyone quickly. But last question, I think we can go to perhaps Will, is what's the best and most up-to-date data sources in terms of water pollution in the UK, and maybe catchments too. So I know you mentioned the Rivers Trust, and there's CABA too, and perhaps would it be right in saying that they're a good resource to go to in terms of how to manage where you are, what's the quality of waters in your catchments?
So CABA has the Agri Advice Hub on their website. So I think that's a really good source, good recommendation, Will. With the projects that the Quarter 2030 projects within the UK, so in the Southeast, in Cameo, the Tamar and the Wyonusk, we're working with the relevant Rivers Trust organisations, so they would also be good sources. I wonder, I'm not familiar with national sources of data, sorry about that. I don't know whether Philippa would like to add, possibly she might be able to help give a national perspective on that.
Yeah, so the Catchment Data Explorer website is where to go to look up water quality status and pollutant issues, WFD, Water Framework Directive status of different water bodies. The other mapping tool that we use is Magic. So there's different layers on there. So you can go, if you go to the countryside stewardship targeting layer, and then you can click on the water quality layers, and you can actually look at what different pollutants are the priorities in different catchments, and they'll come up, they'll be highlighted different colors, and you can also see things like where the protected sites are, where groundwater sources are, and that sort of thing. So that's a good start, I think. Sounds great.
Really useful resources there. I think that's all we have time for. And I see lots of comments too, and we're trying to get any questions answered that weren't answered in the session. But just to say thank you very much, Philippa and Will. It's been brilliant, and really appreciate your insight and time during today's session. So thank you, and thank you, Claire, for chairing, and thank you to our audience. Really good to see lots of you here, and for your input in terms of the questions and comments too. So thank you. We'll leave it there and let everyone get on with their Fridays, and have good weekends all. I hope to see you at the next surgery.
Thank you all. Thank you, Will and Philippa.
Thanks very much.
Really interesting. Thanks,
nice to hear
folks.
from you.